I hadn't slept for 38 hours when I found Marcus's body. The numbers on the camera's display glowed red in the pre-dawn darkness. 4:47 a.m. I was standing on the roof of the Meridian Tower, 42nd floor, capturing the city falling asleep through my lens. Insomnia had turned me into a nocturnal predator, hunting for those moments when the metropolis sheds its mask and shows its true face. New York was brutally honest at these hours. I was taking a series of photographs of the city skyline for an exhibition called Urban Ghosts when I noticed something odd on a nearby rooftop. The Chrysler Annex loomed 200 yards away, its glass facade reflecting the first rays of the sun. At the very top, at the edge of the roof, lay a dark figure. Too unnatural. I aimed the telephoto lens and focused. What I saw in the viewfinder made my fingers tremble on the camera body. Marcus Weinberg was lying face down at the very edge of the roof, his arms outstretched, as if he were trying to embrace the entire city before he died. His expensive Italian suit was torn and stained with something dark. Blood or dirt, it was impossible to tell from this distance. His head was turned in my direction, and even through the lens I could see his eyes wide open, staring into space. My best friend was dead. Pressing the shutter was instinctive, the click of the shutter sounding like a gunshot in the morning silence. Frame by frame, I documented the final resting place of the man who once told me that we would conquer this city together. David. I heard his voice in my memory. You see beauty in destruction, and I build beauty out of chaos. We are the perfect team. It was 3 years ago when we first met at a Soho gallery where I was exhibiting my photographs of abandoned buildings and he was presenting a project to redevelop one. Marcus Weinberg is a visionary architect whose buildings have changed the face of the city. I am David Collins, a photographer specializing in urban decay and metropolitan nightlife. We were friends. We trusted each other. And now he was dead, and I was taking his body off the roof of a skyscraper. I lowered the camera and pulled out my phone, dialing 911. The dispatcher's voice sounded mechanically cheerful. Emergency response service. How can we help? I found a body, I said, surprised at how calm my voice sounded. On the roof of the Chrysler Annex, Midtown Manhattan. Sir, are you sure the man is dead? I raised the camera to my eye again and looked at Marcus. His body had not changed position. In the last few minutes, no movement, no sign of life. Yes, I'm sure. The next 2 hours passed in a blur of procedures, police, paramedics, detectives, forensics. I was questioned 3 times, how I was on the roof at that time, how I knew the deceased, why I had so many photos of the scene. Detective Sarah Morgan was a woman in her 40s with tired eyes and a way of speaking as if every word took effort. She studied my pictures on the camera's display with professional interest. Nice shots, she said. Too bad the subject is your dead friend. I'm a photographer, I replied. It's instinct. I photograph what I see. Even if it's the corpse of your best friend. The question was not spoken with judgment, but rather with curiosity. Morgan had seen enough human reactions to know that people dealt with shock in different ways. Especially if it's the corpse of my best friend, I answered honestly. The camera helps me distance myself, turns reality into an image, makes the pain manageable. She nodded in understanding. Mr. Collins, can you tell me when you last saw Mr. Weinberg alive? A week ago. We were having dinner at Le Bernardin. Marcus was excited about some new project, but he didn't want to discuss the details. He said it could change the whole face of the city. Did he look tense? Worried? I tried to replay that evening. Marcus really seemed out of sorts. He kept looking around, checking his phone, changing tables twice. Yes, I admitted. He was not himself. He kept talking about how in architecture, as in photography, it is important to see what is hidden from the ordinary view. What did he mean? I don't know. Marcus liked to speak in riddles, especially when he was working on something important. Detective Morgan wrote something down in her notebook and closed it. Mr. Collins, we're going to do a full investigation. So far it looks like suicide. No signs of a struggle, no evidence of third parties. But we'll check all the leads. Suicide. The word hung in the air like a death sentence. Marcus, who built a future of glass and steel, who saw beauty where others saw only urban chaos, had committed suicide. It was beyond my comprehension. I left the scene around noon and drove home to my studio apartment in Brooklyn. It was an old, industrial building converted into apartments. Big windows, high ceilings, minimal furniture, and maximum workspace. The walls were covered with my photographs, black and white shots of the city at night, abandoned buildings, people who thought no one was watching. I connected the camera to the computer and started to look through the pictures of the morning nightmare. The images were loading one after another. The city skyline, the first rays of the sun, reflections in glass facades, and Marcus's corpse. I zoomed in, studying the details. Something was wrong. Not the body itself. The forensics team would sort out the evidence. Something about the composition, the way the light fell, the shadows on the roof. I opened Photoshop and started processing the image, increasing the contrast, lightening the dark areas. And then I saw it. There was a shadow in the left corner of the frame by the ventilation shaft. A shadow that didn't correspond to any objects on the roof. The shape was vaguely human, a silhouette that could have belonged to someone watching, but when I took the picture, there was no one on the roof. I was sure of it. I checked the time of the video, 4:51 a.m., 4 minutes after I found the body. So if someone was there, they disappeared very quickly, too quickly for a bystander, or I opened other pictures from the same series, taken before the body was found. Shots of the city skyline, the play of light and shadow on the facades of buildings. At first glance, ordinary city landscapes. But when I enlarged the images and increased the contrast, I began to notice details I hadn't seen before. In the window of the 5th floor of the building opposite, there is a silhouette of a figure looking in my direction. On the fire escape of another house, there is a shadow of a man frozen in an unnatural pose. On the roof of the shopping center, there is a glint. That could be the lens of binoculars or a telescopic sight. As I looked at each photo, the picture became increasingly disturbing. The city was full of observers I hadn't noticed at the time I took the photo. People lurking in the shadows, watching from windows, using every cover to remain invisible. But why did my camera see them and I didn't? The answer came when I paid attention to my camera settings. In the pre-dawn gloom, I used a long shutter speed to capture more light. This meant that the camera captured not only what was visible at the exact moment I pressed the shutter, but also the movements of the few seconds before and after. The ghosts in my photographs were real people who had managed to escape before. I noticed them, but who are they? And what did they want from Marcus? I printed out all the suspicious images and posted them on the wall next to my computer. A map of shadows and silhouettes. An invisible surveillance network that surrounded the scene of my friend's death. The phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. An unfamiliar number appeared on the display. David Collins? Yes. My name is Emma Harris. I worked with Marcus Weinberg. Can I meet with you? It's about his death. The voice was feminine, young, with a barely noticeable tremor. Are you from the police? No, it's hard to explain over the phone. Let's meet in an hour at the Blue Note on Green Street. I'll be wearing a red beret. The connection was cut off before I could respond. I looked at my watch, 3:30 in the afternoon. I had time to get to Soho and find out what the mysterious Emma Harris knew about Marcus's death, but first I wanted to check one more thing. I opened up my archive of photographs from the last few months, all of them taken in downtown Manhattan. If the surveillance system had been around for a long time, it might have left traces in my other work. What I found made my blood run cold. In dozens of shots taken at different times and in different places, I found the same signs of covert surveillance. Silhouettes in windows, shadows on roofs, glare from optics in dark corners. Always on the periphery of the frame, always barely noticeable, but always present. Someone was watching the city. And apparently, me too. I grabbed my jacket and headed for the door, pocketing the flash drive with the most suspicious photos. If Emma Harris knew anything about Marcus's death, maybe she could explain the ghostly figures in my photos too. It was overcast outside, low clouds hanging over the city like a coffin lid. I rode the subway, and it seemed to me that every passenger was studying me too closely. Reflections in the train windows turned into the faces of observers. CCTV cameras watched me from the ceiling. Paranoia or legitimate concern? After this morning's discoveries, I was no longer sure of the difference. The Blue Note was one of those places where artists and freelancers spent their days at their laptops, turning caffeine into creativity. I found a woman in a red beret at a table in the far corner, a petite blonde in her mid-20s with nervous eyes and hands that couldn't find peace. Emma? She nodded and pointed to the chair opposite. Thank you for coming. I know how weird it is to call a stranger on the day his friend died. Her voice was quieter than on the phone, almost a whisper. How did you get my number? Marcus talked about you, a lot, and often. You were important to him. She took a sip of coffee with trembling hands. Emma, what did you and Marcus work as? I'm an architect, a junior partner in his firm. We've been working on a project for the last 6 months that... She trailed off, looking around. That cost him his life. What do you mean? Emma leaned closer, lowering her voice to a barely audible whisper. Marcus had discovered something that connected several of his projects. He was saying that someone was using his buildings for purposes he didn't know about. What goals? Surveillance, control. He found hidden cameras, listening devices, even rooms that weren't in the original plans. Someone modified his plans after they were approved, turning the buildings into nodes in a surveillance network. I remembered the yaoi silhouettes in my photographs, the shadows of observers in the windows of buildings. Do you have evidence? Emma took a flashcard out of her bag. Marcus had been gathering information for the last 2 months. Photos, plans, recordings of conversations. He wanted to go to the press, but he was afraid he would be stopped. Who? I don't know. But Marcus was sure that he was being followed. He had been paranoid for the last few weeks. He was constantly changing routes, checking his phone for wiretaps, and didn't trust even his close colleagues. She handed me a flash drive. He said if anything happened to him, I should find you and give this to you. He said you would see things that others don't notice. I picked up the carrier, feeling its weight, a few grams of plastic and metal that could contain the answer to my friend's death. Emma, why didn't you go to the police? Hurry. Laughter was bitter. Do you think the police don't know? David, this is a citywide surveillance system. It's impossible to build something like this without the authorities knowing. A chill ran down my spine. If Emma was right, Marcus's death was neither suicide nor random murder. It was the elimination of a man who threatened to reveal a secret protected at the highest levels. What are you going to do? I asked. Disappear. Change my name. Move to another city, start a new life. Marcus is dead, and I don't want to be next. Emma stood up, leaving. A few dollars for coffee on the table. David, be careful. If they killed Marcus, they might kill you too. Especially if you start digging. She headed towards the exit, then turned around. One more thing. Marcus said that you see more through a camera lens than with the naked eye. You may have already photographed what they want to hide. With these words, she disappeared into the crowd of passers-by on Green Street. I sat in the cafe for another half hour, turning the flash drive over in my hands and thinking about Emma's words. A city-scale surveillance system, modified buildings, the murder of the architect who discovered the truth, and my photographs, which captured the ghosts of this system. As I walked home, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Every reflection in a shop window could hide an observer. Every passerby could be part of the network that killed Marcus. On the subway, I noticed a man in a dark coat who boarded the same car at Union Square and got off at my stop in Brooklyn. Coincidence, or confirmation of my worst fears? At home, I immediately inserted Emma's flash drive into the computer. What I saw exceeded my wildest expectations. Marcus was a meticulous researcher. The folders on the drive contained hundreds of documents, building plans with modifications noted, photographs of hidden cameras and listening devices, telephone records, diagrams showing the connections between various projects. The picture that emerged from these materials was horrifying. Over the past 5 years, New York City has built a surveillance network that surpasses anything I could have imagined. Dozens of buildings, office blocks, apartment complexes, shopping malls, contain hidden equipment to spy on the city's residents. Cameras, microphones, even devices to intercept cell phone signals. And many of these buildings were designed by Marcus Weinberg. He was used. A prominent architect who dreamed of changing the face of the city unwittingly became an instrument for the creation of a digital panopticon. I opened the audio file, a recording of Marcus's last conversation with an unknown interlocutor. I know what you're doing with my buildings. Mr. Weinberg, you are being dramatic. These are routine security measures. Security? You spy on every resident of the city. This is a violation of the Constitution. The Constitution is an 18th century document. We live in the 21st. The threats have changed, and the methods of protection must change too. I will not participate in this. I will tell everything to the journalists. Mr. Weinberg, you misunderstand the situation. You have no choice. The recording cut off. Saved all the files to a separate hard drive, and hid it in a secret compartment of an old camera. If something happens to me, maybe someone else will find the evidence and continue Marcus's work. Then I went back to my photographs and began a systematic analysis. Now I knew what to look for. Signs of covert surveillance, camouflaged equipment, people who preferred to remain in the shadows, and I found them. Dozens of photos taken over the past months have captured elements of a system I had no idea existed. Cameras disguised as ordinary street equipment, antennas hidden in the architectural details of buildings, people with professional surveillance equipment who thought they were undetected. My city had become an open-air prison, and I was unwittingly documenting its creation. It was midnight when I finally tore myself away from my computer. The insomnia that had plagued me for months now felt like a blessing. Sleep would mean vulnerability, and I couldn't afford it. I brewed a strong coffee and continued working, analyzing every detail, every shadow in my photographs. Slowly a map began to emerge, a surveillance network covering all of Manhattan, and at the center of that network was the building I'd photographed a week ago, a new office complex on Park Avenue, one of Marcus's latest projects. My photographs of this building showed an unusually high concentration of suspicious activity, too many observers, too many strange architectural details, too many people who preferred to remain invisible. If there was a control center for this system anywhere, it was there. I looked at my watch. 3:15 a.m. Ghost hunting time. I packed a camera, spare batteries, a telephoto lens, and an infrared filter. If I was going to photograph those who didn't want to be seen, I needed to be invisible myself. When I left the house, I left a letter on the table with instructions for Detective Morgan on where to find hidden evidence if anything happened to me. Insurance in case my ghost hunt ended with me becoming a ghost. New York at night greeted me with a cold wind and a sense that every shadow hid danger. But I was no longer just an observer. Now I was a hunter, tracking down those who had killed my friend, and my camera was a weapon in this war of shadows. Chapter 2. In focus of Death Park Avenue at 3:30 a.m. resembled a scene from a movie about the end of the world. Empty sidewalks, occasional cars, skyscraper windows like dead eyes staring into space. I approached the Meridian Plaza office complex, Marcus's final project, completed a month before his death. A 40-story glass and steel tower rose into the night sky, its facade reflecting the city lights. At first glance, it looked like an ordinary office building, but I knew what to look for. I positioned myself in the shadow of an old mailbox across the street and began shooting. A long telephoto lens allowed me to see details invisible to the naked eye. An infrared filter made visible what was hidden in the normal spectrum, and I saw. On the roof of the building, disguised as ordinary ventilation systems, were parabolic antennas and equipment that were definitely not intended for air conditioning. Too many wires, too many devices, too much activity for what was supposed to be a simple ventilation system. In the windows of the upper floors, which should have been dark at this time of day, blue lights flickered, the characteristic glow of monitors and server equipment. On the ground floor, behind the tinted glass of the main entrance, I noticed movement. Guards who were too attentive and too professional to be a regular security service. I took frame after frame, documenting details that a normal person would have taken for mundane elements of the city's infrastructure. But my eye, trained by years of photographing the hidden aspects of the city, saw more. After an hour of observation, I realized this wasn't just an office building. It was a command center, the heart of a surveillance system that spanned all of New York City, and it was here that they decided to kill Marcus when he came too close to the truth. I was about to leave when I noticed a familiar figure coming out of the building. Detective Sarah Morgan was walking down the sidewalk, talking on the phone. At 3:30 in the morning, coming out of a building that was officially supposed to be empty. My finger pressed the trigger automatically. Click, and another piece of the puzzle fell into place. Morgan ended the call and looked back, carefully, professionally, like someone accustomed to being watched. Our eyes met across the street, and I saw recognition in hers. She knew who I was, and she knew that I saw her here. Morgan walked towards me, and I knew the time for delicate observation was over. "Mr. Collins," she said, approaching, "this is a strange time for a walk." "I could say the same thing, Detective." She stopped a few meters away from me, her hands in her coat pockets. Her posture was relaxed, but I could see the tension in her shoulders. "What are you doing here?" "I take pictures. That's my job." "At 3:30 in the morning, near the building that is connected to your friend's case?" I raised the camera. The light is interesting at this time, and yes, I am interested in everything related to Marcus's death. Morgan took a step closer. "David, can I give you some advice? Just drop it. Go home, take your pictures, forget about what happened this morning." "What happened this morning, Detective? Did my friend commit suicide? Or was he murdered?" Her eyes narrowed. "Officially, it was suicide. No signs of a struggle, no evidence to suggest murder." "And unofficially?" Pause. Morgan glanced at the building behind her, then back at me. "Unofficially, there are things that are better left unsaid. There are truths that are dangerous to your health." "Whose health?" "Yours." She began to move away. "David, I'm serious. Leave it. Some secrets are too big for one person." Morgan disappeared into the shadows between the buildings, leaving me alone, with the camera and the growing realization that I had gotten myself into something far more dangerous than a simple murder investigation. I returned home as dawn was turning the sky pink. Images of the last few hours swirling through my head. Morgan walking out of the building into the dead of night, her warning, the equipment on the roof of Meridian Plaza. A surprise awaited me at home. The door to my apartment was slightly open. The lock was not broken, the hinges were not damaged. Someone had opened it professionally, most likely with master keys. I entered cautiously, camera at the ready. The apartment looked untouched. The furniture was there, the equipment was intact, nothing had been stolen. But the professional eye of a photographer noticed details. The books were out of order, the computer mouse was not where I had left. One of the photographs on the wall, was crooked. Someone searched my apartment very thoroughly and very carefully. I checked the cache in the old camera. The hard drive with Marcus's files was still there. Either they didn't find it, or they weren't looking. Maybe they were interested in something else. My own photographs. I turned on the computer and checked the files. Nothing had been deleted, nothing had been changed. But there were traces of remote access in the system. Someone had copied my photos over the internet while I was away. Now they knew what I had seen. They knew about the silhouettes of the observers in my photographs, about the details of the surveillance system that I had been unwittingly documenting for months. I was compromised. The phone rang. An unfamiliar number. "Mr. Collins." The voice was male, calm, with a barely noticeable accent. "Yes. My name is Thomas Reynolds. I represent an organization that is interested in your work." "What organization?" "The one who built what you're photographing. We'd like to meet you." A chill ran down my spine. "What if I don't want to date?" "Mr. Collins, let's be realistic. You've seen things you weren't supposed to see. You photographed things that were meant to remain invisible. We have common interests. I doubt. We can offer you the truth about your friend's death. Isn't that what you want? Pause. He knew that the truth about Marcus was the only thing that could make me agree to the meeting. Where? Central Park, Bow Bridge, in 1 hour. Come alone, and don't forget your camera. The connection was interrupted. I looked at my watch. 6:30 in the morning. The park was almost empty at this time, which made the meeting even more dangerous. But I had no choice. I grabbed a camera, extra batteries, and a voice recorder. If this was a trap, I wanted to record what was going to happen. Central Park greeted me with a cool morning breeze and occasional joggers. The Bow Bridge was one of the park's most picturesque spots, a Victorian iron structure spanning a lake. It would normally be crowded with tourists, but now the bridge was empty, almost empty. In the middle of the bridge stood a man of about 50, in an expensive gray suit, tall, with silver hair and a face that could belong to a successful businessman or politician. He looked at the water, his hands folded on the railing. "Mr. Collins," he said without turning around, "punctuality is a good quality in a photographer." I moved closer, holding the camera at the ready. "Are you Thomas Reynolds?" "One of my names." He turned to me. His eyes were blue, cold, with the expression of a man accustomed to making difficult decisions. "You took some very interesting photographs, Mr. Collins, especially the ones taken this morning. So it was you who searched my apartment. We prefer the term security audit. Your images show elements of a system whose existence must remain secret." Reynolds pulled a tablet out of his pocket and showed me the screen. It contained my photographs, the silhouettes of the lookouts, the hidden cameras, the equipment on the roofs of the buildings. "See these details? Each one is part of a security network that protects this city from threats that ordinary citizens are unaware of." "What threats?" "Terrorism, organized crime, cyber attacks." The world has become a dangerous place, Mr. Collins. The old methods of defense no longer work. I raised the camera and took a few shots. Reynolds didn't object. "And for this, you killed Marcus Weinberg?" His expression did not change. "Your friend was an idealist. He thought privacy was more important than security. Unfortunately, he didn't understand the consequences of his actions." "What actions?" "Marcus was going to tell the press about our system. It would have put the safety of millions of people at risk." Reynolds put the tablet away and turned to face me. "Mr. Collins, we are not enemies. We work on the same side, protecting people from those who want to harm them, killing those who ask uncomfortable questions, making small sacrifices for the greater good. That's the price of security in the modern world." I felt sick. This man was talking about killing my friend as if it was a business decision. "What do you want from me?" "Cooperation. Your photography skills could be useful to our organization. We offer you a job, well paid, interesting, important for national security." "What if I refuse?" Reynolds smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Then, you become a threat that needs to be neutralized." "As your friend?" "A direct threat." I turned on the recorder in my pocket, hoping the microphone would pick up his words. "I need time to think." "Of course. You have 24 hours. Tomorrow at the same time in the same place you will give us an answer." Reynolds started to walk away, then turned around. "And Mr. Collins, don't try to hide. We're watching your every move. Better choose to cooperate." He disappeared into the trees, leaving me alone on the bridge. I sat on the park bench for another hour, pondering Reynolds' words. A surveillance system that killed those who threatened its existence. The choice between cooperation and death. But there was a third option. I pulled out my phone and dialed Rachel Stone, a New York Times journalist who specialized in investigating government corruption. We had met several times at exhibitions, and she had asked about my photographs of the city's social problems. "Rachel, this is David Collins. I have some material that might interest you." "David, we haven't talked for a long time. What are you talking about?" "About a surveillance system that covers all of New York. About corruption at the highest level. About the murder of an architect who wanted to tell the truth." Pause. "Is this serious? Deadly serious? Shall we meet?" "Sure, but not on the phone. Morningside Cafe on 110th Street in an hour." The connection was interrupted. Morningside Cafe was one of those places where Columbia students studied for exams over coffee. Noisy, crowded with many entrances and exits, it was the perfect place for a private meeting. Rachel Stone was a woman in her 40s with a sharp mind and a reputation as a journalist who was not afraid of powerful enemies. Red hair, green eyes, a notebook in her hand. I told her everything. About Marcus's death, about the files on the flash drive, about the surveillance system, about the meeting with Reynolds. I showed her the photos, let her listen to the recording of the conversation. Rachel listened carefully, taking notes. "David, this is a huge story. If even half of what you're telling is true, it's a national scandal. Do you believe me? The evidence is compelling, especially the photographs and audio recording. But I need independent verification of the facts." She closed the notebook. "Give me 48 hours. I'll check the information through my sources, find confirmation. If everything matches up, we'll publish the material on the front page." "I don't have 48 hours. I have to give Reynolds an answer tomorrow morning." "Then don't come to the meeting. Disappear for a few days until we publish the article." "What if they find me?" Rachel looked at me seriously. "David, if these people really did kill your friend, they will not hesitate to kill you too. The only defense is to make the information public." We parted, agreeing that I would give her all the materials and disappear while she prepared the article. The plan was risky, but there was no other way. On my way home, I noticed that I was being followed. Two men in inconspicuous clothes, who changed positions but did not lose sight of me. Professionals. At home, I quickly packed a backpack with the bare necessities, copied all the files onto several drives, and prepared a package for Rachel with all the evidence. Then I went down to the basement of the building and left through the emergency exit, which led to the next block. I spent the next 2 days in a cheap motel in Queens, waiting for Rachel to call. Reading the news, waiting for the story about the surveillance system to appear in the papers. But the article did not appear. On the third day, I called Rachel. The number was disconnected. I found her house in Brooklyn and went there. The neighbors said that she had gone on a business trip and had not said when she would return. The New York Times told me that Rachel Stone was taking a leave of absence for family reasons. She disappeared, as did all the evidence I gave her. Realized I was alone against a system that was far more powerful than I had imagined. They could make a journalist from an influential newspaper disappear. What could they do to a freelance photographer? But I still had one trump card left. I returned home late at night through the back door. The apartment was under surveillance. I saw a van with tinted windows on the opposite side of the street. But I needed to pick up something important. The hard drive from the old camera's hiding place was there. All of Marcus's files, all of my photos, the whole truth about the surveillance system. I connected the drive to my computer and started uploading files to dozens of file-sharing services at once. Every photo, every document, every audio recording. If I get killed, the information will still become public. Sooner or later, someone will find these files and tell the world the truth. The loading took 3 hours. All that time I was waiting for the door to be broken down and for Reynolds' men to burst in, but they were waiting. Perhaps they were hoping that I would come to the meeting voluntarily. When the last file was uploaded, I made a list of links and sent it to 20 journalists, human rights defenders, and activists. Some of them will not believe it. Some will be scared, but some will definitely be interested. Then I sat down to write a letter. The full story of the surveillance system, Marcus's murder, Rachel's disappearance. Everything I knew, everything I saw, everything I photographed. The letter was sent to the editorial offices of dozens of newspapers and television channels. Now all that was left was to wait. I met the dawn on the roof of my house, camera in hand. If this was my last day, I wanted to spend it as I had spent thousands of others, watching the city through the lens. New York was waking up beneath me, millions of people starting a new day unaware that their every step was being recorded, every conversation was being listened to, every movement was being tracked, but now they have a chance to find out the truth. At 6:30, the telephone rang. Reynolds. "Mr. Collins, you didn't show up for the meeting." "I was busy." "We know what. Very unwise of you." "Perhaps, but it's too late to change anything now." Pause. "You think you've won?" "Mr. Collins, we've been working for decades. We have connections. At all levels of government, in the media, in internet companies. Your information will disappear as quickly as it appeared." "Maybe, but at least I tried." Marcus Weinberg tried too. Look how it ended for him. The connection was interrupted. Stayed on the roof, waiting for the inevitable. Maybe it would be an accident, a fall from the roof while filming. Maybe a robbery gone wrong, maybe just a disappearance. But an hour later, the phone rang again. This time it was an unknown woman. "Mr. Collins, this is Anna Miller from the Washington Post. We've received your materials on the surveillance system in New York. Can we meet?" Then a reporter from CNN called. Then a reporter from the BBC. Then 10 more journalists from different countries. Information was spreading faster than the system could suppress it. By the end of the day, the first articles appeared on the internet. By the end of the week, the story of the secret surveillance system in New York had become an international scandal. Reynolds didn't call again. A month later, congressional hearings began. 2 months later, the first people responsible for the program were arrested. 6 months later, the surveillance system was officially dismantled. Justice was served, perhaps, but Marcus remained dead, and Rachel Stone was never found. I continued, photographing the city, but now my pictures were different. I was not looking for shadows and ghosts, but for people, alive, real, free from constant surveillance. Sometimes, looking at my old photographs, I thought that the camera really does see more than the human eye. It captures not only what is there, but also what is trying to hide, and sometimes this ability can change the world, but the price of such change is always high. Too high. In memory of Marcus Weinberg, an architect who wanted to build beauty, not prisons. In memory of Rachel Stone, the journalist who sought the truth and paid for it by disappearing. In memory of all those who see what others choose not to notice. The cold lights of the city continue to burn. But now we know that some of them are not lights, but the eyes of those who watch. And knowledge is the beginning of freedom.